Welcome to the Cover 4 podcast. I'm Nolan Kangas alongside Bradshaw Furlong, Jeff Wall, and a new gentleman is joining us on the pod, Luca Moia. Luca, how's it going, man?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited, man. Draft always gets me pumped up. Free agency kind of has passed, and now we're focusing towards the draft, so it's going to be fun.
Luca and I have obviously done some stuff in the past, and obviously he knows these guys as well. He definitely knows his stuff when it comes to football. Let's see if he knows his stuff when it comes to the draft, because this is going to be a fun one. Absolutely. It's going to be a little bit different, where we'll probably do some picks where, this is what we expect the teams to do. And I know Jeff has some players that he really, really loves and might be a reach in some people's eyes, but that's where it'll be a little bit more different than other mock drafts. But guys, we're going to get it started here with the most obvious pick in the whole entire draft. I will be starting that with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are going to pick, of course, Trevor Lawrence, quarterback out of Clemson. He's been the best quarterback prospect since, you've heard it, Andrew Luck, John Elway, Peyton Manning. I don't have to get into this too much. That is who Urban Meyer is picking with his first pick. So I'll put that on the simulator, start it up. Trevor Lawrence. Now, number 2, the New York Jets. This pick might be a little bit obvious as well, but Jeff is selecting second in our mock draft. Jeff, who are you taking here?
I think all the rumors point to Zach Wilson being the guy, unless there's one more smoke and mirror in there. But I think it's either Zach Wilson, maybe it's Justin Fields if his, him breaking the 4.41 time is to be believed. I mean, that's incredibly fast for any quarterback regardless. But I mean, I wouldn't be mad at either pick. They need a quarterback. I will say this much. I don't think it matters what quarterback. I don't think if it's Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, doesn't matter. They're going to have a really, really tough first year. It really is going to depend how the New York Jets and Robert Saleh try to manage him in that first year. Hopefully don't get whoever it is beat up too much. But yeah, for me, the pick is Zach Wilson, no doubt. And I think they may have a superstar on their hands.
It's surprising you didn't stick with Sam Darnold and draft a tackle there. Maybe Adam Gase was the problem. We got to keep relying on Sam here. Third is going to be Luca. So Luca, the 49ers, they made the big splash, huge trade moving from 12 to 3. Kind of obvious that they're going to take a quarterback, but who's that quarterback going to be for you?
Well, I appreciate you guys giving me the most entertaining pick in the draft. So I think I'm going to go Justin Fields, and I think there's obviously a chance that they can go Trey Lance. But I just love Justin Fields. I've loved him ever since he committed to Georgia. Him and Trevor Lawrence have kind of been the number 1, 2 prospect throughout their college career. And what do your eyes tell you, guys? My eyes, what I saw is he led Ohio State to the national championship game, and he looked pretty good doing it. And I think under that offense with Kyle Shanahan and the receivers that can do a lot of things after the catch, I just think it's a great fit there in San Francisco. I like Justin Fields. I think he's going to be a great professional.
Love it. So we have 3 quarterbacks to get us started. And now it's Bradshaw. Obviously, when we did this sort of draw of, who's going to be picking, first, second, third, fourth, he was first, but he really wanted to draft for those Atlanta Falcons, obviously his favorite club there. So Bradshaw, number 4 overall pick. Who are your Falcons taking?
Well, if we were doing trades, I would expect them to trade down. I think if you're at this spot, they have the most valuable spot in the draft at this point after seeing the first 3 quarterbacks go off the board. And I think you're looking at a team like Denver. You're looking at a team, maybe even the Vikings, Nolan, if your Vikings want to get up there. The Patriots, Luca, if they want to jump up. Definitely not the Panthers. I can't see the Falcons trading with the Panthers to give them their quarterback of the future. But since we're not trading down, and if the Falcons were to stay at 4, my preference and what I think they would do would be to take Trey Lance. I would think they would take their quarterback of the future. You're not expecting to draft this high ever again, God forbid. And I think you got to take your chance at getting your quarterback of the future, even though you have Matt Ryan under contract for the next few seasons. And I think Trey Lance would be a perfect fit in Arthur Smith's offense.
And I think that's a quarterback who everyone has been saying kind of might need a year to figure out the NFL's game speed, whereas the other guys might ease into it a little bit more. Sits behind Matt Ryan for a year. Maybe the Falcons even, get to the playoffs with that new offense with Arthur Smith. But Trey Lance, 4 quarterbacks in the top 4 picks. That brings us to the Cincinnati Bengals. They don't need a quarterback. They got Joe Burrow, took him first overall last year. And here's the big question is, do they go tackle and go Penei Sewell, or do they go get Joe Burrow's best friend, his wide receiver, who ended up winning the Biletnikoff Award a couple seasons back in Jamar Chase? And I think in this situation, I'm going It's hard, man. It is really hard. I'm going to go safe here. I think it is both a deep class at tackle and both a deep class at wide receiver. I think in that second round, they might be able to get another receiver. Tyler Boyd's terrific in the slot. T. Higgins had a really great first year there in Cincinnati. So maybe getting that guy in the second round might help them out a little bit more. Let's get the sure thing, right? Let's get Penei Sewell. I know they got Riley Reef. So even if you put Sewell on the right side to start his career, he's the best tackle prospect in a long, long time. That's what everyone says. He just mauls people over when he gets to the next level. So I think that'd be a great fit there in Cincinnati. Now we move over to another team that traded back to 12 and then traded back up to 6, which was a really interesting move for the Miami Dolphins. But maybe that spoke a little bit more volume about what the Eagles are trying to do. The Eagles, it was reported, they wanted to get up to 2 and get Zach Wilson. The Jets said, no way, Jose. So they said, okay, we don't maybe like any of the other quarterbacks that fit with this team. We're going to stick with Jalen Hurts, definitely not Joe Flacco, and maybe get a player that they really like at 12, and they get another first-round pick next season. So, Jeff, the Miami Dolphins, this team is going to be stacked in the future of all the picks they've collected from that Laramie Tunsil trade. So who is it at 6 for the Dolphins?
There's so many directions I think you could go, just because I think the top of the draft has so many like really, really talented players. You could easily go Jamar Chase there, right? Give to a good secure target or whatever quarterback is coming up there. I do kind of agree. I think this says more about what the Eagles are trying to do than what the Dolphins are trying to do. I don't think that they're going to take a quarterback right then and there. I think that they're going to just kind of go with the best player available. But I also think, with, a little bit of a Patriot feel in there, I think they'll go offensive line, not wide receiver. So I think that they will take Rashawn Slater there. I think he's a good athlete. He's been able to play across the offensive line. That's definitely a Patriot thing. So I think when you look at that, I think that's what they're going to go for. And look, I think the reality is that's generally the better thing to do, is go with offensive line, protect whatever quarterback you have there, and let Tua figure it out. I don't think Tua has that many excuses. So you add another tackle there, and I think that, you're really starting to figure out what exactly this team can do. So to me, that's kind of the no-brainer for me.
And I like that, Jeff, right? They added Will Fuller. They still have Devontae Parker, who Bradshaw really loves. Preston Williams was banged up all of last year. So maybe you get that guy with the 18th pick in the draft who can fill in and help be that next wide receiver for Tua. But Slater, obviously, some people's first best tackle prospect, our second, I believe, but that would be a great fit there in Miami. Now, Luca has a really tough situation here. The Detroit Lions absolutely suck. That roster is an absolute mess. How are you going to fix it? There's so many holes on this roster. I think wide receivers they're throwing out there is Quintez Cephas and Geronimo Allenson. The receiver room is a mess. But again, the defense was so bad last year with Matt Patricia. What's the plan here for those Lions, man?
I don't know. I'm you guys left me with Kyle Pitts, and it's like, do I pair him up with Hawkinson? I'm thinking where the Lions go in that direction, but I think they got to go the best player available, and I think that's Jamar Chase, just because you look at all the receivers in this division. They play against Allen Robinson twice a year. They play against Devontae Adams. They play against Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. He's coming up. He could be a real stud in this league. You got to give Jared Goff some weapons, and I think Jamar Chase could be that guy. He was a beast. He opted out last year, but everyone's talking about Devontae Smith and what a great year he had at Alabama this past season. Jamar Chase had maybe an even better one if you look deep into the stats. So I think Jamar Chase is the pick here for the Lions. They got to go receiver, and they got to get the offense rolling because they got to keep up with those guys in the division.
Yeah, obviously they lose Kenny Galladay in free agency. This is, they're going to hope this guy can end up being their next Calvin Johnson. I'm not obviously comparing the two. Calvin Johnson was a freak, but Jamar Chase in his college days looks like a freak. And I think that would be an awesome number one target for Jared Goff to get started for a team that's probably going to be struggling, next season. But the Panthers here, obviously, all the talk has been they don't want Teddy Bridgewater. They want to move on. They want to get their quarterback. But it's going to be tough unless you give an absolute boatload of picks to the Falcons to move up. Still really, really tough to see an in-division trade. But Bradshaw, that rival of yours in Carolina, who do you have them taking?
I'm not. I know it's a rival, and I could potentially screw them over here, but I refuse to give them Mac Jones at 8. I refuse to do that. I do not think Mac Jones is a top 10 pick in this draft. I don't care how desperate you are for a quarterback. Deal with Teddy Bridgewater for another year. He wasn't that bad. He was fine. He was a serviceable player. Get another weapon in there. You already have DJ Moore. You still have Robbie Anderson. I don't think they need a wide receiver like some people think they might need a receiver. So I'm going to give them Kyle Pitts, who's basically a receiver but plays tight end. I think that's a nice player for Teddy Bridgewater, and to get him in that Joe Brady offense, I think that'd be really, really scary for the Carolina Panthers. So give me Kyle Pitts. I will not give them Mac Jones. I refuse to do that. I think that's such a reach there at number 8. If you want to trade back, maybe, but I mean, I don't know if he'll slide past the Broncos here, but yeah, I'm going with Kyle Pitts. I think that's a better fit for them, and I don't want them to reach on a quarterback.
And speaking of that quarterback position, Denver needs one because Drew Lock has been an absolute disappointment, ever since he stepped in the NFL. That is the team I think we all see might be willing to trade up and swap with the Falcons there, because it kind of makes sense. Both, out of conference, the team desperately needs a quarterback. They have a ton of weapons that can really help them out. The Falcons, obviously, Bradshaw ends up taking Trey Lance to sit a year behind Matt Ryan, but they aren't as quarterback needy as clearly this Denver team is. So do I go Mac Jones? I don't know if I would if I'm Denver. So I think I've got to go best player available as well. They do have lots of corners now. Obviously, Jeff Spuddy there. Kyle Fuller is over there in Denver now too. So do I go a corner? I don't know. I think in this position, though, they're stacked at wide receiver. Von Miller's getting up there in age, but still he's so talented. So why don't I go a guy who Vic Fangio is going to absolutely love, and that's the best linebacker prospect in the draft in Micah Parsons. I know Jeff would disagree. He loves JOK there out of Notre Dame, but I think Parsons can do a lot of things, and learning behind Vic Fangio, who is one of the best defensive minds in the game. They take best player available for me, and it was tough. I think they're really going to be the team that trades up for a quarterback, but can't see them taking Mac Jones there at 9. Jeff, Cowboys, man. Who are they taking? They obviously have some holes on the defensive side of the ball, but I think their offense is going to be pretty loaded, and obviously they get Dak back there with that big deal.
It seems like the Dallas Cowboys have had problems with cornerback forever. So I think it seems like a no-brainer when you've got basically every cornerback available. I've seen some mixed reviews on all the corners. Caleb Farley just got his whole back injury thing, and now you don't know when that's going to come back to haunt you. Patrick Surtain is interesting. It's weird. I don't find him that physical for being such a big guy and being an Alabama quarterback. I don't. I think he's actually pretty fast and fluid, and he has all the tools there. But personally, just my personal preference, I would go with JC Horn. To me, he's the most complete guy. He seems like the most ready guy, the most physical ability, the best ability to jump in the air, I think. I hate, it seems like such a cop-out to compare him to Stephon Gilmore because he comes from the same school and he's got dreadlocks, but he really, there's a lot of things about him that's very, very similar. He has all the, the quote, what you need at the position sort of thing. And I think his versatility, his physicality, he's got all that stuff, man. He really is a lot like him. And I really love his game. I personally prefer that versus the sort of patchy history of injuries with Fairley, and then what I said about Surtain. So yeah, I think you go with JC Horn. Plus, man, his pro day was great. It was great. So can't knock him at all.
I think JC Horn's certainly rising in this draft to be the first corner selected. I wouldn't be surprised either. To me, he's got almost that Jalen Ramsey nastiness where he's going to talk smack the whole entire time. Everyone brings up the game against Auburn and Seth Williams, where Seth Williams could have been maybe a first round, second round receiver. And he made him look so bad in that game that Seth Williams is going to end up going in the 5th, 6th, 7th round at this point. Obviously, Bo Nix might have something to do with that as well for Auburn because that offense was stinky. But yeah, JC Horn, man, he's going to be a lot of fun there. A team that doesn't need a cornerback anymore is the New York Giants, obviously picking up Adoree Jackson. I thought that was a really sneaky good move there. But they still have some holes, whether it's on the offensive line or maybe needing an edge rusher. But Luca, what are you going to do here for the New York Football Giants?
You guys are leaving me talent all over the board. I don't know how these GMs do it, but I think I'm going to go and address offensive line. And I'm going to go Elijah Vera-Tucker for this one. I think his versatility where you can put him at guard or tackle, I think because Nate Solder, this is probably going to be his last year for the Giants. So when he goes, they drafted Andrew Thomas 4th overall last year. Kind of controversial because we know how good Tristan Wirfs was for the Bucs, but I think Elijah Vera-Tucker, he can slide into tackle if Soldier leaves next offseason or if they sign another one. I think he's going to be good. Saquon's coming back. This is a prove-it year for Daniel Jones. They went out, they signed Kenny Golladay. They got Kyle Rudolph to pair with Evan Ingram. Nice little tight end duo they got going there in New York. But that offensive line up with the run game, I think this is it for Daniel Jones. He has to prove that he can do it, and I think he'd be a good fit in New York.
Yep. I think that's a good selection. Their offensive line sucks. I think Shane Lemieux had the worst PFF grade. It was something in the 34s or something ridiculous there at guard. So I think getting Vera Tucker out of USC would be a solid move there. Bradshaw, the team that moved back, and this team as well has quite a few holes. But again, lots of receiver talent on the board there for the Philadelphia Eagles. So where do you have the Eagles going?
You guys have left me with like an embarrassment of riches here for the Eagles. My goodness. Like
I know.
I was like, okay, maybe I can sneak out, get one of the corners, or maybe get one of the Alabama receivers. I got Surtain, Farley, Smith, and Waddle are all available. Even Jeff's guy, Rashad Bateman's on the board here for me. I could go literally wherever I want here with the Eagles, and I think they'd be happy. This is tough. I was not expecting to have to make this kind of decision. I thought Jeff would be a little smarter than this. I blame Jeff for this. Give me Devontae Smith, though. I think that's something. I think that's probably the highest upside pick they can get for their receiver position. Give Jalen Hurts something to throw to. He doesn't have much, so give him something to throw to. I know the size is a bit of an issue, but we saw him be so productive at Alabama. He was the only guy there with Jalen Waddle out for a long time, and Devontae Smith was so good. And I would like to make Jeff happy by going Rashad Bateman this high, but I can't deny how high the upside is with Devontae Smith. And I know their cornerback situation is a mess, an absolute mess, but I think Devontae Smith's a pick here for the Eagles.
I think it's a good one too. I think Waddle doesn't make sense for them as Jalen Reagor's sort of that guy who can, stretch the field and also be a nasty player. Whether it's a 50-50, he can do it all. But man, Smith would be really sweet in that offense if, that Alabama connection, or I guess past Alabama connection, Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith. That leaves me with the Los Angeles Chargers. A part of me wants to just go Jalen Waddle and pair him in this offense because it would be so gross. But I think the main thing is they have quite a few weapons there for Justin Herbert. I think you got to protect him a little bit too. So let's go with Christian Darrisaw. I think it's a safe pick. I know it's not, anything too sexy there. They could go edge because obviously we have all of our players left there on the board, but man, I like Darrisaw a lot and he bullies kids. That's what he did in college. And he's such a strong tackle there. He'll fit in nice there in Los Angeles. That leaves Jeff with my Minnesota Vikings. Please be nice to them, Jeff.
There are also there's so many teams with a lot of needs in this draft. I guess for me, I think the Vikings are actually pretty smart. So I don't think they'll do anything crazy here, but there's just so many weird holes. And also oddly, their needs are pretty much offensive line. They really need to fix that offensive line, but you guys just took the top 3 tackles and I don't rate anybody below them to really reach for that. I think there's value elsewhere. You could go edge. There's definitely a lot of edge talent. And I've been pondering this because nearly every time I've done a mock draft here, all the edge guys have been there and I picked an edge guy every time. But I just love the guy too damn much. And I kind of feel Mike Zimmer could do something with him. So I'm going to go with my guy, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah there from Notre Dame. He's just way too damn versatile. I know there's not a lot of big tight ends in this division as of yet, except Hawkinson. Hawkinson will definitely be a threat, I think, in the future. But I think you got to go with him just because he can do so damn much. He is way too versatile. He is you can basically play positionless defense. I would have picked him for the Chargers, honestly, if I was you, Nolan, because that way you have Derwin James in an insurance policy, essentially, if he has to leave or if he's not as good as he is after that horrible injury. But for me, you just have to take the best player available. And to me, he is the best player. He can do way too many things for you.
I think with the Vikings, if Vera Tucker was there on the board or Darrisaw was on the board, they're obviously sprinting the card and taking an offensive lineman. Those guys have already been selected. I could see edge, but JOK would be interesting. And I think that does make a little bit of sense now. Yes, they have a great linebacker tandem, Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr. A restructured contract with Anthony Barr. He's due a ton of money. And with that restructure, he's a free agent next season if he wants to be. So I could see that. I think that would be a lot of fun. And you mentioned Mike Zimmer. That would be his guy. That would be a ton of fun there for the Vikings. Like that pick a lot. Luca is going to like this one a lot. He gets his New England Patriots at pick 15. Is it going to be Mac Jones taking over the reins there in New England? We will see. Luca, who do you got here for the Pats?
Man, first it was Nolan with Micah Parsons. Then it was Bradshaw with Smith. And now Jeff just takes the linebacker. So I'm left with 2 Alabama players here. And it's not Mac Jones. I don't think I'm going to be looking at Mac Jones here. It's Jalen Waddle. I think that could be something good for New England. Or Patrick Surtain. We know Bill Belichick loves his corners. This is a man-to-man defense. You put Patrick Surtain on that defense, it becomes even better. I just think they have to pick Jalen Waddle here. It's just staring at them in the face. They need a burner. Nelson Aguilar, don't get me started with the amount of money they paid him. But I think Jalen Waddle on a rookie deal, again, another prove-it year for one of these quarterbacks in Cam Newton. If he can't succeed with this, I don't think he's going to be starting in the NFL. So I'm going to go Jalen Waddle.
Yep, I think Jalen Waddle, that would be nice there for the New England Patriots. Obviously, they spent a ton of money on wide receivers. You mentioned Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, but he would be the number one guy there, and that would be a ton of fun. Almost like that Cam Newton MVP year where Ted Ginn was his number one guy. Can you imagine a guy with as much talent as that and Waddle in that offense? Zooey Mama. I can't believe I just quoted Diary of a Wimpy Kid. That was really embarrassing. All right. 16, the Cardinals. Cliff Kingsbury. This should be the pick 16. Let's get rid of the coach to get started and just let Kyler go crazy. But obviously Bradshaw is going to have the reins here on who the Cardinals are going to select.
Well, again, this is another one that I wasn't expecting to have to. I didn't expect to have some guys here that are available to me. Every time I've gone through here, it's been like, okay, Christian Barmore, lock it in. Let's keep it moving. Because some of these guys weren't available to me. They don't have corners. I know they signed Malcolm Butler, but they do not have any corners. Robert Alford and Malcolm Butler are a very poor cornerback duo, to say the least. I don't think they should be reaching for a tight end here to get them on offense. It really comes down to if you like Farley or Surtain more. And when I was going through the rankings, I know Farley has the injury history and he didn't play last year. He only has 2 years of the position, but I love what I've seen from Caleb Farley. I think Caleb Farley is again, highest upside between the two of them. I think you take Caleb Farley, you have a potential number one corner for a very, very long time, replacing Patrick Peterson. So give me Caleb Farley. It's a risky pick for the Cardinals, but I think you got to take some big swings here.
Yeah, I like it. Obviously, the back injury is going to be concerning to some teams, but he still ends up being our corner number 2, I believe. We still have Surtain on the board there. That leaves me with the Raiders. Their offensive line got blown up in the offseason with free agency and trading Trent Brown and everything. So I think they have to go offensive line, even though their D was so bad last year. Yeah, it sucks because there's so much talent there on the board, but it's basically going to be Derek Carr just running around for his life. And he's not a quarterback who really does that well at all. So let's go tackle. It's going to be a little bit of a reach, unfortunately, but I think you have to do it at this spot with all the other guys going early. You don't want to miss out on a guy like this. So let's go Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State. Really great in pass protection, run, protection or basically just blocking on the run is something he'll need to improve. Strong guy. He just bullies, once again, some edge defenders. I believe Joseph Asai, he made him look horrible when Oklahoma State took on Texas. So I think that's what you want to see when you're kind of looking at tackles as well, is how do they play against NFL talent? He dominated. So I think that's a guy that would fit really well with the Raiders. But again, guys, Mike Mayock and John Gruden, we wouldn't be surprised if they took a guy who would be more on our day 3 board, because they just go wild when it comes to the draft. Speaking of wild, second pick here for the Dolphins. Jeff, who did we take here in the beginning? I think you took Slater to get started for the Dolphins. So they've answered the offensive line. Now, do they go get a weapon?
Something of a weapon. I think you might be a bit surprised, but hear me out here, okay? He's going to be way lower on most people's boards for a couple different reasons. I watched him at first. I didn't like him. Then I was like, you know what? I actually see a particular player in him. And that is Zaven Collins from Tulsa. The reason why is because to me, he looks so much like Dante Hightower, right? Except I think he's a bit more high potential in the pass rushing department. And I think he's a bit of a better, more fluid athlete, not as explosive, like, forward, backward acceleration kind of thing, but his versatility is there. And you got to think, Brian Flores was the guy who worked with all those players. And I think he comes from more, I guess you could say, this newer version of the Patriots. And so I think that's his school of thinking. That's why he got a guy like Kyle Van Noy. But to me, he is better than Kyle Van Noy, and he's going to be less pricey than Kyle Van Noy. And I think he completes the defense and allows you versatility in a lot of different ways. And they have to keep building on their strength. And to me, that's the defense. So we'll go with Zaven Collins there at second pick there for the Dolphins.
Zaven Collins. Like you said it, a little bit higher than some people expect, but he has some really good upside, and he dominated at Tulsa there. Obviously, competition, question mark, but man, he looked really, really good and can do a ton of things there. Washington football team, Luca, they've got Ryan Fitzpatrick now. They also have some other weapons, and they had a really great free agency. We all mentioned that, but what are they going to do here at 19?
I feel like I'm in a fantasy draft, man. You guys are picking all my players here. Jeff just, again, takes another one of the players I thought would be a good fit in Washington. I think I have to go best player available here. I think Patrick Surtain, he's falling this low. I think I got to take him just because that defense is already so good with the D-line. And I think now if you give an extra couple of seconds to the D-line to get to the quarterback, I think it's going to be that much more impactful. So I think Patrick Surtain, best player available. Washington falls in love with this pick. He's still here at 19. It's crazy that he's still here, but I think Washington, again, they pick Surtain, and their defense is going to be loaded for years to come.
I'm telling you right now, if they pick Surtain and he falls there, this team's winning the division. If you look at that defensive line, and I believe they picked up William Jackson III in free agency, right? We already know Kendall Fuller is there as well. He's a pretty talented corner. And get Surtain at 19, that would be unbelievable. I love that move, Luca. Now, Bradshaw can torture Jeff here. Chicago Bears. Tough quarterback situation there for Andy Dalton. They do need some weapons. Their defense, we know, is going to be pretty good, but still, they could go corner. They're obviously losing Kyle Fuller. What do the Chicago Bears do here, Bradshaw?
Rashad Bateman, one of Jeff's favorite players, is still right there on the board. But you know who else is on the board? Mac Jones. Mac Jones just sitting there in prime, developed behind Andy Dalton territory. Oh, that would be fun, wouldn't it, Jeff? That would be a lot of fun to watch Mac Jones sit on the bench.
Just burn it down, man. Just burn it down.
I could also I know they don't need it, but Kwity Paye is fantastic. I love Kwity Paye. That would make their defense even better. I know it's not the same position, but Akeem Hicks is apparently trying to leave. I don't blame him for wanting to leave, but I don't think Allen Robinson is there long term, and I don't think you have a better chance than this to get a number one wide receiver. I know there's going to be a lot of deep wide receiver classes in the future, but Jeff's kind of turned me around on Rashad Bateman. I do love me some Rashad Bateman. So I'm gonna give him his dream, and I'm gonna give him Rashad Bateman. You don't have to watch Mac Jones, Jeff. You're welcome. Rashad Bateman to the Bears at 20.
You did the right thing, kid. You did the right thing.
Just hire me instead of Ryan Pace.
Jeff would be buying that Bateman jersey right away. He's loved this guy
1,000%.
for it seems like a long, long time. Obviously, if you check out the Instagram, we did our top 5 prospects, and he surprised quite a few people with Bateman. They're at 2 behind Chase, but man, he's got a ton of upside. He's going to be a really, really talented player. It's just, can the quarterback find him on the field there, Andy Dalton? It's going to be tough, but at least you have your guy now, Jeff, in Rashad Bateman. That goes to the Colts. This is an interesting team. Obviously, they have Carson Wentz now. They do have a few weapons there, but I still think there's some question marks. I do like Michael Pittman Jr. It seems like, Carson Wentz loves his tight ends, but to me, I don't know if I want to take Pat Freiermuth this early, but I still think they need to answer the tackle position here. Anthony Costanzo retires, a little bit surprising. So let's go a tackle. Again, I feel lame, reaching for these tackles, but they need one. And someone who, again, might be going a little earlier than we expected, Sam Cosmi. And yes, he might end up being a second-round player. tackles are flying off the board. And I think a reason for this is you look at last year when all those tackles went, teams started to reach. But man, when you get a home run like Tristan Wirfs, teams are going to be excited to try and get those good players. And you look at Tristan Wirfs' combine, very similar numbers to Sam Cosmi. So maybe he can fit there in Indianapolis and protect Carson Wentz blindside for the future. And obviously a young piece there at left tackle to pair with Quentin Nelson, arguably the best guard in football. Not the sexiest move, but again, I think that's something the Colts would do. Again, the Colts are a team that likes to trade back anyway, so we don't even know what they do there if they stay at 21. 22, sticking in the AFC South, Jeff, in the Tennessee Titans, kind of been an odd offseason for them. I would maybe consider them losers. Spend big money on Bud Dupree, lose Adoree Jackson, lose Corey Davis. But again, what we've been saying, this is a really deep class of weapons. Right now, it's kind of just A.J. Brown and nobody there for Ryan Tannehill. So I wonder if what Jeff's going to do here at 22. But Bateman, again, like we mentioned, he's off the board now.
Yeah, I mean, this is tough. I mean, I would love to tell you like I have a really good grasp of where they would go here based on what's happened. I really don't at all. Like I really, really don't. I pretty much have to go on my instincts here. And I'm assuming with getting Bud Dupree, they're not going to want another edge rusher, even though I do think it couldn't hurt. I don't think that's what they're going to do. I'll say that much. There are some decent corners though, and their pass defense was pretty brutal last year. And there's not a lot of like that outside wide receivers, that X, that Z to complement AJ Brown. I would love to give them Elijah Moore because I really, really like him, but I just don't think that's, I guess I would say that maybe I do have a bit of a better idea what they're going to do. At least I have an idea what they won't pick. I'm going to go with Northwestern's Greg Newsome at cornerback. Another guy that's kind of versatile, physical. I see you shaking your head there, Luca. I love it. I love that. So yeah, I mean, Northwestern had a great year, and I think there's a reason for it. They were a really good team, and Greg Newsome's probably going to be a steal in this draft, and I think he's a guy that Vrabel's going to like a lot, especially in this division where, you know, I think the offenses are going to start to get a lot better than they have been in years past.
Like that pick, again, Newsome has kind of been rising a little bit. Everyone kind of assumed he was a second rounder, but his pro day he performed pretty well. And again, corners go a little bit earlier, and now corners are going to start being taken a little bit earlier than we expected. But I think, like you mentioned, Jeff, he could end up being a really, really nice player. Jets, second pick, they had, you know, one of the more obvious ones going Zach Wilson at 2. They could go anywhere here on the board because, again, like we mentioned, tons of holes. Could go edge, could go get another weapon, could go offensive line. What did the New York Jets here do here, Luca?
Well, again, guys, I mean, you look at these running backs, they're being talked about so highly regarded. I'd probably stay away from that because look at the teams that are picking after them. They could probably get one at the top of the second round. So I'm going to pass on that. Again, there's Kwity Paye here, an edge rusher, but I just think they go for Zach Wilson. They get him a weapon, and I think this might be a bit of a reach, but, you know, it's the Jets, so they could do this kind of thing. I think Kadarius Toney from Florida could be a pretty good weapon for Zach Wilson. You can put him in the backfield. You can put him on end arounds. He's an explosive player. I just think surrounding, you know, your young quarterback with even more weapons. They brought in Corey Davis. I think this could be a potential here. They could go best player available, like I said, and add an edge rusher from Michigan, but I think Kadarius Toney, I think they go with him.
I like it. And I think with Mike LaFleur there, they like those guys who get yards after the catch. Mm-hmm. He does that. He is a freak after he catches the ball. And sort of, and I know I've made this comparison. I think I made it last year to Laviska Shenault Jr. He's that Deebo Samuel, can do so many different things, but also wants to hit you in the mouth when he has the ball too. I think he'd fit well there with the New York Jets. And let's hope Denzel Mims can end up being a really talented player. Mm-hmm. Then you're starting to get some weapons there for Zach Wilson. So I like that pick there, Luca. That leaves us with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They could be the team here, Bradshaw, that goes and gets a quarterback because Big Ben's arm is falling off. But what do you have Pittsburgh doing?
Well, I think the glaring need is they just, like, if you could get any talent onto that offensive line, like, that would be the ideal pick. But my God, guys, you have just devoid me of any talent. You left me with all the talent for the Eagles, and you've given me nothing for the Steelers. And I don't like, they don't need a ton of help on defense. Kwity Paye doesn't do anything for them. Christian Barmore doesn't do anything for them. None of the edge rushers really do anything for them. They don't need a receiver. I think in this scenario, if they're left with what's available to them, they're running to the phone and drafting Mac Jones. Like, you have to take Mac Jones here if you're the Steelers. Big Ben is bad. Like, objectively is not a good quarterback anymore. And you need something for the future. He could even step in this year if Big Ben, goes down. So good Lord, Pittsburgh, I'm sorry. There's no offensive line help for you, but you get Mac Jones. So there's your quarterback of the future, I guess. Yeah, Mac Jones it is.
Well, we don't know if that's the quarterback of the future because Dwayne Haskins.
I forgot.
There in Pittsburgh, but I do like it, and that was sort of one of the more mocked moves earlier in the mock drafts. If we think way back in February and January, was Mac Jones end of the first round to the Saints, or end of the first round going to this Pittsburgh Steelers team. So I think that makes a ton of sense. Whereas other teams might reach on him earlier, but he falls to 24. So I do like that, Bradshaw. That leaves me with the Jags. This is their second pick. Obviously, number 1 was Trevor Lawrence. I'm not going tackle again here, even though I do think they need to improve the offensive line. They have weapons at wide receiver too, right? Like I like DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault Jr., Marvin Jones is going to be the vet there in the locker room. They have pieces. So let's go improve that defense, right? And I know this isn't, I'd like to go with safety here, but I don't think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to go interior defensive line because we mentioned, I know Jeff's shaking his head. I read the quote.
Talent.
Hey, Urban Meyer says the heart of the defense starts there in the middle. So maybe that's not the smartest.
And that right there is why he's going to lose his job, Nolan.
He's going to do it. And even though people were talking, Christian Barmore's pro day numbers didn't really jump off the page for me. I was expecting it to be a little bit nicer. It was closer to a 5 flat 40-yard dash, but he dominated in those big games when it counted against obviously Notre Dame. And that was the best offensive line in college football was the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and he made them look horrible. And obviously he was a wrecking ball against those Ohio State Buckeyes. So I kind of have to do it here. I'm looking at the rank for PFF in the average draft position. He's ranked their 14th best player. So if I can get him at 25, I know sometimes edge would be a little bit better, but they've gone edge quite a few times in the past couple of drafts. So let's shore up that interior defensive line there. Jeff, now I know I'm sorry I made that move. You were pretty upset with that one, but what can Cleveland do? They can go a few different directions and they look really good. Obviously they won free agency. We kind of talked about that. Getting Troy Hill and John Johnson Jr. Or John Johnson III. So they don't need a safety anymore, but what are they going to go?
They could use an extra one though. No, let's just be clear on that. No, I'm kidding. They actually could go a few different directions, but I think they're only going to be looking at one position on the board based on what we have done. I got to think this doesn't play out. Maybe it will, but I honestly do think that there is something to this. Maybe the edge class, I feel like there's so much athleticism there, but the polish isn't there from a lot of those guys. Like, it's just like when I watch guys, I find like everybody's getting like offensive linemen are getting their hands all over them. They're not able to like keep the offensive lineman's hands off of them at all, which does scare me a bit, especially when you're relying on athleticism, which is not going to be as big a gap in the NFL. That does scare me. For me, I'm just going to go with my gut here. And I don't think it's that big a gap in terms of athleticism. I'm going to go with Jalen Phillips from Miami. I think he's a more polished guy of him and Rousseau. Rousseau is an absolute monster of a human being, an absolute devastating edge rusher. But Jalen Phillips is also a great athlete too. And he can stand up. He can do a bunch of different things. I think you go with the guy that's going to give you the most immediate impact and really help that secondary that struggled a lot last year. Now you have 2 bookend edge rushers. I absolutely love that. That's how I build all my teams in Madden too. So I can't knock it at all. I got to go with Jalen Phillips there. And you know what? In a division where I think that this actually can help you contain Lamar Jackson a little bit more, I think you have to go with him.
Surprising move, but you kind of hit the nail on the head there that he is that polished guy. Where you look at a Jason Oweh, who is a freak, had 0 sacks last year. Kwity Paye, again, a freak, but might be a little bit more of a project. Rousseau as well, opted out this past year in his, I believe that was his redshirt freshman year or his sophomore year, whatever it was, 19 sacks. He was phenomenal, but Phillips might end up being the best edge rusher in this class and ends up going to a team that can desperately need a number 2 there on that line. So that leaves the Baltimore Ravens staying in the AFC North there. Again, we've said this plenty of times. They can go a few different directions, but there is a position staring them right in the face there. They tried to answer it recently with Sammy Watkins at wide receiver, but what are you going to do here, Luca, to improve this Baltimore Ravens team?
Again, like you said, the receiving, I feel like Baltimore's every single year, they're like, hey, they need a receiver, right? And they don't seem to find that guy. And there are obviously some concerns with Lamar Jackson and his arm. Like, you can get as many receivers as you want, but if the quarterback can't give him the ball, like, how good are they going to be, right? So I think they're just going to go again. They could go best player available, and I'm going to take Kwity Paye from Michigan. I just think putting him on the defensive line, just to help out that defense, guys. I mean, you look at their defensive line; they've tried to address this, right? Calais Campbell and Ngakoue, they get in. It hasn't really panned out the way they thought it would. So I think getting a guy like this, I know he's a bit of a project, like you guys have been saying, but Baltimore does a pretty good job of shaping out prospects, and I think if they can get him on the right page in the right system, I think he can be pretty impactful for them. So I'm just going to go best player available here.
I like it. I like it. Again, we've mentioned deep wide receiver class, and we've only had 4 goes so far, right? So they could get one in the second round there, if needed, or in a later round. New Orleans Saints. It seems like they have their quarterback. It is not Taysom Hill. It is going to be Jameis Winston. I pray to God it is, even though I, can't stand the Saints. What are they going to do here, Bradshaw? They are one of the most talented teams there, absolutely loaded, and they keep restructuring these contracts, pushing them back because they want a Super Bowl run really, really bad. Who can be that player that helps them get there?
I was thinking about Kwity Paye just take best player available. They have a ton of talent on that team already. You lost Trey Hendrickson, getting an extra pass rusher, which they didn't need, but they could still just adding that in and making their defense even better. He's gone. I don't like Jason Owe enough to take him with the Saints pick. And then Russo, maybe Russo. I do like Ojulari as well. I think he's probably the most polished out of all of them from what I've seen. Both of the Moores, Rondale and Elijah are both, they could use some extra talent on the outside, getting Jameis Winston a little bit of help instead of just Michael Thomas all the time. But the more I look at it, Malcolm Jenkins is 33. He has a potential out in his contract after this season. He's not my number 1 safety on the board, but I think he fits them the best. I think Richie Grant would be interesting, but Trevon Moehrig, I think he is by far the best cover safety in the draft. Richie Grant has shown quite a bit in at the Senior Bowl, but Trevon Moehrig and having that kind of safety net, no pun intended, for Malcolm Jenkins, if he, as he's getting a little older and with his contract being what it is, and they'll need all the cap space they can get, I think in my opinion, he's probably the best player on the board, just looking at what's available. I do like a lot of the edge guys. I think a lot of them surprise me, but Trevon Moehrig, I think, has to be the pick for the Saints. I think that's a nice insurance policy for them in the secondary, and I think that they just best player available if they can't get a star receiver or a star corner or something. I think you got to go with the best player available.
Obviously, Bradshaw didn't take Richie Grant there because he wants the Falcons to go and get him.
Of course. And I refuse to let Asante Samuel's son go to that garbage organization.
All righty. So the Saints end up getting their safety of the future. You mentioned it. Malcolm Jenkins getting up there in age. Packers. I think they got to take another backup quarterback here at this position, right? That's
I'd do it.
Kyle Trask here at 29.
Kyle Trask it is.
Makes it perfect, exactly like Aaron Rodgers to the T.
All right. 29 is, like we mentioned, tons of receivers left on the board here. I feel like this is the year they have to do it. Everybody keeps saying, no, that's not going to fit them. They might go a tackle. They could, maybe get a center there. Obviously, lose Corey Linsley. For some reason, they re-signed Kevin King, who basically cost them that NFC Championship game. Lots of corners there. I'm going to go a receiver here, and I'm going to go Rondale Moore. And maybe that's a little bit earlier. His size scares me a little bit, guys. 5'7", right? He is an athletic freak. He is incredible speed, like 4.29. After the catch, he's a monster. But that's not what Devontae Adams does well, right? He's not a yak guy. He's going to catch everything, whether you throw him a seam, whether you throw him a comeback, whether you throw him an in and dig, whatever it is. But yak guys, they don't really have someone like that. And MVS, you can't really count on. Ton has one of the worst hands in the league. So let's get Rondale Moore. A gadget player would be really fun in that offense in Green Bay. They tried to do that a little bit with Ty Montgomery, and it didn't really work out. Let's get more of a sure thing there. And Rondale Moore to the Green Bay Packers. I hate that they're getting more weapons. That hurts me a little bit. But I think, with players of that caliber there left on the board, that's what they got to do. Buffalo Bills now at 30. Again, one of the most loaded rosters in football. There are some holes there. So, Jeff, how are you going to fill that?
Every single time I did this simulation, the Bills never ended up with anything I wanted. And finally, they get pretty much anything I could have ever wanted. So we're going to take the other Miami pass rusher, Gregory Rousseau. He's way too much of an athletic marvel to not take him and think you might be able to do something with him. Yeah, he is almost completely technically deficient, almost completely. But I think the fact that he hasn't played the position that much, you could kind of maybe say, that's a pretty good excuse to go and take him. He's got too much talent there to not give it a shot. I wish he played one more season to make sure that he might not be a complete another bust, but why not take him? A lot of guys think he's the best pass rusher in this draft. So I think it makes the most sense for them. They could not get to Mr. Patrick Mahomes. So maybe this gets them one step closer.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. At that value at 30, go and get your edge guy of the future. They ended up taking AJ Epinesa, I believe, in the second round last year. So maybe he takes another leap, but Rousseau there at 30 would be nice. Now, the Kansas City Chiefs, again, made some noise in the offseason. They cut both their tackles. They ended up getting the best guard available, who ended up leaving your New England Patriots there, Luca. But how are you going to help out this Chiefs team make it back to the Super Bowl? Obviously, lots of holes on this team. They could, obviously receivers available, but they don't maybe need that. Corner could help. It might be a bit of a reach if they go maybe like a Dylan Radins or anything like that. So, Luca, what do you have at 31?
Guys, I think a lot of talented players are going to slip into the second round just because of the needs of certain teams. And this is a team that, like you said, they need a tackle. And I'm surprised Alejandro Villanueva is still out in free agency. No one has signed him. I thought he could be maybe at least a year replacement on this offensive line. But I think I'm going to go off the board here. I'm going to pick Jalen Mayfield from Michigan. I think he could play right or left tackle. I think you put him on the offensive line, you can help them out. They don't really commit to the run game. So I don't like hearing the excuses that they can't run the ball. They just don't commit to running the football. But they drafted a running back in the first round last year. Maybe you get a guy like Jalen Mayfield to protect Mahomes, improve the run game. I think they're going to go off the board, and they have to take an offensive lineman because we saw it happen in the Super Bowl, and it was not pretty.
They would be praying for one of the tackles that we picked earlier to fall to them. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if they traded up with a team almost like the Colts, who we've said, they're going to trade down, something like that, where they go and get their surefire guy there. 32, this is the most talented team in football. Bradshaw, I don't even know what you could go here because they are so loaded. But what do you have at 32 for the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Every time I've done this, it's just they hate PFF hates everything I do for this team. I pick something that maybe that could be a need and no, bad pick. So I honestly stare at this board and I'm like, I have no idea. Like it's what do you get to the team that has everything? Like they have receiver depth, they have a great offensive line, they have great tight ends, they have a really talented defense. They don't need really any help with this with corners. There aren't any I don't know if you reach on Richie Grant here. I mean, they could use a safety, perhaps. Like if you're not convinced on Jordan Whitehead, perhaps you go Richie Grant here. Oh, geez. I know. Oh man, Chris Godwin's only got 1 year on his. He signed the franchise tag. You could go Elijah Moore here, get a guy in the slot. Oh, Jeff loves that. Jeff seems to be very intrigued by that. I mean, you could also just throw a pass rusher and just let him wreak havoc with more pass rushers. Good Lord. I you know what? Just let Tom Brady throw to even more people. Give him Elijah Moore and see what happens. Let's see if they can figure it out.
Wow. Elijah Moore there. Obviously, one of those weapons probably gone, right? Antonio Brown, I believe, is still a free agent. But hey, the more the merrier, right? If they just get more weapons for an aging Tom Brady, who seems to not age at all, that would be insane for this offense. Elijah Moore going at the end of our first round in our first mock draft. That's it, guys. Ton of fun. Obviously, we're going to put up an image on our Instagram, so make sure to check out the Cover 4 Podcast Instagram, the Cover 4 Podcast Twitter. This episode will be up in a little bit on Spotify, so make sure to keep your eyes open for that. For Bradshaw, Jeff, and Luca, Guys, that was a ton of fun. We'll do it again soon. See you guys.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Lingo Sports and Lingo News for a whole lot more just like this.